I walked down that aisle in complete silence. Every pair of eyes in that church was on me. 300 guests, my father's arm linked with mine, the string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon, and at the end of that aisle, standing next to the priest in his custom Tom Ford tuxedo, was my fiancé, Marcus. He was smiling. I was about to destroy his entire life. See, what Marcus didn't know, what nobody in that church knew, was that 12 hours earlier, I'd watched security footage of him in our honeymoon suite with my cousin, Jessica, the cousin I'd asked to be my maid of honor, the cousin who was standing at the altar right now, holding my bouquet, wearing the lavender dress I'd helped her pick out. The photographers snapped pictures as I approached. Marcus's mother dabbed her eyes with the tissue. His best man gave him an encouraging nod. I reached the altar. My father kissed my cheek and sat down. The priest opened his mouth to begin. And that's when I handed Marcus an envelope instead of taking his hands. "Read it," I said, loud enough for the front 3 rows to hear. The color drained from his face. But let me back up, because to understand what happened next, you need to understand how I got here. You need to understand who I was before this moment. And you need to understand exactly what Marcus took from me before I took everything from him. My name is Claire Westfield, and 6 months ago, I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. Marcus Chen and I met at a healthcare administration conference in Chicago. I was 3 years into my career as a hospital operations director. He was a pharmaceutical sales rep with a corner office, a Tesla, and the kind of confidence that makes you feel like you're the only person in the room. Our first date lasted 7 hours. Dinner became drinks. Drinks became a walk along the waterfront. By 2 in the morning, we were sitting on a bench sharing stories about our families, our dreams, our fears. He told me about growing up as the son of immigrants who sacrificed everything for his education. I told him about losing my mother to cancer when I was 19 and how it shaped my entire approach to healthcare. He cried when I told him that story. Actually cried. 3 months later, he proposed on the rooftop of the restaurant where we'd had that first date. Rose petals, photographer hidden in the corner, the works. The ring was a 2-carat diamond that must have cost 3 months of his salary. I said yes before he even asking. My father loved him. My friends loved him. Even my younger brother Daniel, who hated every guy I'd ever dated, told me Marcus was actually pretty cool. The wedding planning started immediately. We set a date for June, exactly 1 year from our first date. I wanted something elegant, but not too showy. Marcus wanted the wedding everyone would remember. Looking back now, I can see the red flags. But when you're in love, really genuinely in love, you don't see red flags. You see quirks. You see passion. You see a man who cares deeply about making things perfect. Red flag number 1, Marcus insisted on inviting his ex-girlfriend to the wedding. "We're friends," he said, completely platonic. It would be weird not to invite her when she's in our friend group. I didn't love it, but I agreed, because that's what you do when you trust someone. Red flag number 2, he became obsessed with Jessica. My cousin Jessica is objectively beautiful, model tall, professionally gorgeous, the kind of woman that makes people stop mid-conversation when she walks into a room. She'd just moved back to town after a messy divorce, and I wanted to include her in the wedding party to make her feel connected to family again. Marcus loved the idea. Maybe too much. "Jessica would be perfect as your maid of honor," he suggested one night. "She's stunning. The photos would be incredible. Not she's your family or she's important to you. The photos would be incredible." But I ignored it. I trusted him. Red flag number 3, the bachelor party. Marcus planned a weekend in Vegas, completely normal. But 2 days before the trip, he added 4 guys I'd never met to the guest list. Clients, he explained. Good for networking. My brother Daniel went on that trip. When he came back, he was quiet. Too quiet. Everything okay? I asked him. Yeah, but his eyes said something different. Just, Marcus, he parties pretty hard, you know? I laughed it off. Boys'll be boys, right? Wrong. The final red flag came 3 weeks before the wedding. Marcus started working late, like really late, 2, 3 in the morning, coming home smelling like expensive perfume he swore was just lingering from client dinners. Baby, the quarter's ending. I'm closing major deals. This is our future I'm building. Our future. Those words made me feel guilty for even questioning him. We'd already booked the Grayson estate for the reception, a historic mansion with gardens that look like something from Jane Austen novel. The venue alone cost $40,000. My dress was a custom Vera Wang. We'd hired a band that had played at a royal wedding. The guest list hit 300 people. My colleagues, my hospital coworkers, family from both sides, friends from college. We'd sent out invitations printed on Italian cardstock with gold leaf edges. This was supposed to be the beginning of our life together. Instead, it became the greatest performance I've ever given. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. It wasn't nerves, it was something else. A feeling in my gut that I'd been ignoring for weeks. That voice in the back of your head that knows something is wrong even when your heart refuses to listen. Marcus was staying at the Grayson estate. We'd booked the entire venue for the weekend, including the luxury suites where the wedding party would get ready. Tradition said we shouldn't see each other until I walked down the aisle, so I was at my father's house with my bridesmaids. At 11 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was my brother, Daniel. "Are you awake?" he asked. "Yeah, can't sleep. What's up?" There was a long pause. Then he said, "I need to tell you something, and you're going to hate me for not saying it sooner." My stomach dropped. Daniel told me that on the Vegas trip, Marcus had disappeared for 3 hours with a woman at the hotel bar. The groomsmen covered for him, said he was just networking, but Daniel saw them go into an elevator together, saw Marcus put his hand on his lower back. "I convinced myself I was seeing things," Daniel said. "I didn't want to ruin your happiness over nothing. But Claire, tonight at the rehearsal dinner, I saw the way he looked at Jessica. It's the same way he looked at that woman in Vegas." I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. I said, "You're wrong. You have to be wrong." "I hope I am, but you deserve to know what I saw." I hung up, stared at the ceiling, told myself Daniel was projecting his own relationship issues onto my situation. Marcus loved me. We were getting married in 12 hours. But that voice in my gut got louder. At 1 a.m., I made a decision. I got in my car and drove to the Grayson estate. The night manager knew me. We'd been coordinating wedding details for months. "Mrs. Chen-to-be," he said warmly. "Couldn't stay away?" "I left something in the honeymoon suite," I lied. "Just need to grab it real quick." He handed me a key card, without hesitation. The honeymoon suite was on the 3rd floor. As I walked down the hallway, my heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. I was being paranoid, crazy. Marcus was probably asleep in the groom suite with his best man, watching movies and having one last night as a bachelor. I reached the door to our honeymoon suite and heard laughter inside. Female laughter. My hand shook as I pressed my ear to the door. Marcus's voice. "Tell Claire, obviously. This is just..." Jessica's voice. "One last time before you're locked down?" More laughter. Then silence. Then sounds I will never be able to unhear. I stood in that hallway for 30 seconds that felt like 30 years. Every cell in my body was screaming at me to burst through that door, to scream, to cry, to burn the whole building down. But I didn't. Instead, I walked back to the elevator, went down to the lobby, smiled at the night manager. "Actually," I said, "do you have security footage of the third-floor hallway?" His smile faltered. Why would you need that?" he asked. I leaned close, dropped my voice. "Between you and me, I think one of the groomsmen smuggled in someone he shouldn't. I don't want any surprises tomorrow. Can you just check the footage from the last 2 hours, third floor, near the honeymoon suite?" He hesitated. I pulled out $300 cash. "For your discretion." 5 minutes later, I was watching security footage in his office. 7:47 p.m. Marcus exits the elevator, alone. 8:23 p.m. Jessica exits the elevator, walks directly to the honeymoon suite, knocks. Marcus answers, pulls her inside. The timestamp burned itself into my brain. "Can I get a copy of this?" I asked. I really shouldn't. $500. He burned it to a USB drive. I sat in my car in the parking lot until 2 a.m., watching their shadows move across the window of the honeymoon suite, watching the lights finally go dark. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone. I just thought. Marcus had humiliated me in our honeymoon suite the night before our wedding with my cousin, the woman I'd trusted enough to stand beside me at the altar. He'd gambled that I would never find out, that even if I suspected, I'd never have proof, that I was too invested financially, emotionally, socially to back out now. He'd gambled that I was weak. He was wrong. By the time the sun came up, I had a plan, and it was beautiful. At 6 a.m., I went back to my father's house. The bridesmaids were already awake, sipping mimosas and giggling about the day ahead. "Claire, where have you been?" my best friend Amanda asked. "We were worried." "Couldn't sleep, went for a drive." I smiled, hugged her, poured myself a mimosa. Nobody suspected a thing. While the hairstylist curled my hair, I made a phone call. "Richard, it's Claire Westfield. Sorry to call so early." Richard Morrison was my father's attorney, a bulldog of a man who'd handled my mother's estate and my father's business contracts for 30 years. "Claire, it's your wedding day. What's wrong?" "I need you to draft a document for me, right now. I'll email you the details." "What kind of document?" "A post-nuptial agreement, with very specific terms." I explained what I needed. He was silent for a long moment. "Claire, are you sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." "Give me 2 hours." While the hairstylist curled my hair, I called my cousin Tom. He worked in IT security and owed me a favor from when I helped him get hired at the hospital. "I need you to pull up text message records," I said. "Marcus Chen and Jessica Westfield. Last 3 months." "Claire, that's not exactly legal." "Tom, please." Another long silence. "Give me an hour." By 10 a.m., I had everything I needed. The security footage showing Marcus and Jessica entering the honeymoon suite together, the text messages between them dating back 4 months, hundreds of messages, everything from "can't stop thinking about last night" to "Claire can never know." The post-nuptial agreement Richard had drafted, stating that in the event of infidelity discovered within the first year of marriage, the innocent party would receive 100% of all marital assets, plus liquidated damages of $200,000. And one more thing. I'd made copies of everything, burned them to 3 separate USB drives, given one to Richard, one to my father, and kept one in my bouquet. At 11:30 a.m., I put on my Vera Wang dress. It fit perfectly. The lace, the train, the tiny crystal beads that caught the light. I looked like a princess. Amanda started crying. "You're the most beautiful bride I've ever seen." I smiled. "Thank you for being here with me." Jessica arrived at noon. She looked radiant in her lavender dress. She hugged me tight. "I'm so happy for you," she whispered. I hugged her back. Today is going to be unforgettable. At 1:35 p.m., I pulled Richard aside in the hallway. "Is everything in place?" He nodded, handed me the post-nuptial agreement. "Once he signs this, you own him." Good. At 1:30 p.m., my father came to my room. His eyes were wet. "Your mother would be so proud of you," he said. "Dad, I need you to trust me. No matter what happens in the next hour, I need you to trust that I know what I'm doing." He studied my face, saw something there that made him pause. "Always," he said. The music started at 2 p.m. That walk down the aisle was the longest 30 seconds of my life. Every step felt like walking through concrete. My father's arm was steady, but I could feel him trembling slightly. He knew something was coming. He just didn't know what. The guests smiled. Some dabbed their eyes. Marcus's mother was openly weeping with joy. Marcus stood at the altar looking like a magazine cover, handsome, confident, in love. Jessica stood beside him, holding my bouquet, her expression serene. I reached the altar, took my position across from Marcus. The priest smiled warmly. "Dearly beloved." "Wait," I said. The church went silent. I reached into my bouquet and pulled out an envelope. Handed it to Marcus. "Read it," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Marcus's face faltered. "Baby, what—" "Read." His hands shook as he opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph, a still image from the security footage, time-stamped 8:23 p.m., Jessica entering our honeymoon suite, Marcus pulling her inside. The blood drained from his face. "Keep going," I said. He pulled out the next item, a printed text message conversation. Marcus: "Can't wait for tomorrow, one last night before I'm officially off the market." Jessica: "You're terrible. What about Claire?" Marcus: "What she doesn't know won't hurt her. Besides, you and I have unfinished business." The front rows were leaning forward now, trying to see what was happening. Marcus looked up at me. His eyes were wild. "Claire, I can explain." "No," I said calmly. "You can't. But I can." I turned to face the congregation. 300 people staring at me. "Last night," I said, my voice steady, "my fiancé and my maid of honor spent 3 hours in our honeymoon suite, together. I have security footage, I have text messages, I have everything." Gasps rippled through the church. Marcus's mother made a choking sound. Jessica dropped my bouquet. "Claire, it's not—" "Shut up, Jessica." I turned back to Marcus. He looked like he was going to be sick. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to walk out of this church right now. You're going to the reception venue, where our guests are not joining us because there is no reception. You're going to pack your belongings from the honeymoon suite and leave the Grayson estate." "Claire, please." "I'm not finished." I pulled out a document from the envelope, the post-nuptial agreement. "Before you leave, you're going to sign this. It states that any assets you acquired during our engagement using my financial support or connections, including the Tesla Model S I co-signed for, the Rolex I bought you for your birthday, and the $15,000 I loaned you for business expenses, will be returned to me within 30 days. His face went white. "I can't." "You will. Because if you don't, this USB drive in my hand will be sent to your employer. Your boss, Stephen Richmond, is sitting in row 12. Would you like me to give it to him now, or would you prefer to sign?" Stephen Richmond, a distinguished man in his 60s, was already standing up, his face purple with rage. Marcus's lips trembled. "You're insane." No, I said. I'm done being naive. I looked at Jessica. She was crying, mascara running down her face. As for you, I said, you're no longer welcome at any family function, any holiday, birthday, or gathering I attend. You will not. My father agrees. My brother agrees. You made your choice. My father stood up from his seat. She's right. You're out. The priest cleared his throat awkwardly. Perhaps we should... There's nothing to continue, I said. The wedding is off. Marcus grabbed my arm. Claire, you can't do this. I love you. I pulled away. You love what I gave you, the respectability, the connections, the financial stability. You saw a woman who was generous and kind, and you mistook that for stupid and weak. His jaw clenched. I could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, the desperate search for an angle, a way to salvage this. He wouldn't find one.
Sign the document, I said, or I'll make copies of everything and mail them to every single person in this church. Richard stepped forward from the front row, pen in hand. Marcus looked around wildly. His best man wouldn't make eye contact. His mother was sobbing. The groomsmen were frozen. He signed. I took the document, folded it carefully, and handed it to Richard. Then I looked out at the congregation one last time. "There's coffee and cake in the hospitality hall," I said, "since we already paid for it. Enjoy." I picked up my train, turned around, and walked back down the aisle. Alone. The silence was deafening until I reached the halfway point. Then someone started clapping. My brother Daniel, then Amanda, then my father, then row by row, the entire left side of the church, my side, erupted in applause. Marcus stood at the altar, still holding the pen, watching his entire life implode. And I walked out of that church with my head held high. The next 72 hours were chaos. Marcus tried calling, texting, showing up at my apartment. I had already changed the locks and filed a restraining order. Richard handled everything. Jessica sent a 6-page letter begging for forgiveness. I burned it without reading past the first sentence. Marcus's employer fired him within 48 hours. Apparently, Stephen Richmond had been looking for a reason to cut him loose. Marcus had been faking sales numbers for months. The scandal of being exposed at a wedding in front of clients and colleagues was just the final straw. The Tesla was repossessed when Marcus couldn't make payments without my cosign. The Rolex was returned to me via courier. The $15,000 in business expenses? Richard put a lien on Marcus's bank accounts. I recovered everything. The wedding vendor contracts were ironclad. Marcus's name was on 70% of them as cosigner. When he couldn't pay his share, it destroyed his credit. But here's the thing nobody tells you about revenge. It doesn't feel how you think it will. I wasn't happy. I wasn't sad. I was just empty. For weeks after, I went through the motions. Work, home, sleep, repeat. My friends rallied around me. Amanda organized Divorce the Dress party, where we cut up my Vera Wang gown and made it into a Halloween costume. My father took me to our favorite restaurant every Sunday. Daniel moved into my guest room for a month just to make sure I wasn't alone. Slowly, I started to feel human again. 3 months later, I got a promotion at the hospital. Director of Operations for the entire regional network, the position I'd been working toward for 5 years. 6 months later, I went on my first date since the wedding that wasn't. His name was David. He was a trauma surgeon. Kind eyes, gentle hands. He made me laugh. It didn't work out long term, but it reminded me that I could trust again. Slowly, carefully. 1 year later, I ran into Marcus at a coffee shop. He looked rough, thinner, older, working as a sales associate at a tech startup based on the company lanyard around his neck. He saw me, froze. I walked up to him. "Hi, Marcus." "Claire," his voice cracked. "Look, I know you don't want to hear this, but I'm sorry.
I was an idiot. I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me. I studied his face, saw genuine regret there. You did, I agreed, but you also taught me something valuable. What's that? That I'm stronger than I ever knew, that I don't need someone else to complete me, that I can stand up for myself even when it costs me everything. He nodded slowly. You were always strong. I just didn't see it. No, you saw it. You just thought you could exploit it. I picked up my coffee, started to walk away. Claire? I turned back. For what it's worth, I hope you're happy. I smiled. I am. And I meant it. So that's my story. Some people think I went too far, that I was vindictive, that I should have just called off the wedding privately and moved on. But here's what I know. Marcus betrayed me in the cruelest way possible, in a place that was supposed to represent our future together. He did it with someone I trusted. He did it because he thought he could get away with it. And if I had handled it privately, he would have told everyone that we grew apart, that it was mutual. He would have kept his job, his reputation, his dignity. He would have learned nothing. Instead, he learned that actions have consequences, that you can't build a life on lies, that some people will fight back. I didn't ruin his life. He ruined it himself the moment he chose to betray me. I just made sure everyone knew the truth. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think I went too far? Would you have done the same thing? Or would you have handled it differently? Leave a comment below. And if you believe in standing up for yourself, even when the world tells you to be quiet, hit that subscribe button, because I have more stories about people who refuse to be victims. Remember, being kind doesn't mean being weak, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away with your head held high. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.